Good afternoon, one and all. I just welcome Dr. Ruhi Lal, who is an associate professor and head student support, and Dr. Dharmendra Kumar, who is professor and head examinations, to give us an opportunity for this workshop, research project writing and data analysis. And today we are holding the workshop on research design and approach, qualitative and quantitative. And we are having a very special guest of honor, Professor Dr. Naveen Srivastav from Birla Institute of Management. Here's a brief, though he's a well-known face in the field of education. But yes, here's a brief about him. Dr. Naveen Srivastav is head OVHR of management practices at Birla Institute of Management Technology. He was formerly associated with University of Indore and Amity University, India. He holds an MBA and LLM from University of Indore and a PhD in management from University of Udaipur, India. His doctoral work is in the area of effectiveness, spirituality at work, and building value driven organizations. He is having more than 18 years of experience in management, teaching, and training. He has published and reviewed papers in national and international journals. He has been awarded for his distinguished services by Birla Institute of Management Technology, India. He has conducted management development programs at government and non government organizations, including leading PSUs, armed forces, postal departments, etc. His academic journey has been very enriching in terms of its versatile exposures and continuous learning opportunities. As a professor of business management, his endeavor has been to educate and enable students and management professionals to evolve as a better human being. As a behavioral trainer, he has facilitated professionals to acquire right behavioral as well as technical competencies to evolve as responsible managers. His academic credentials, with a blend of management and legal competencies, have facilitated learners to acquire ethical business sense to drive organizations effectively in this dynamic business environment. Professor Dr. Naveen, you are welcome on board, sir. Over to you, sir. So we would like you to take over the session on research design and approach, qualitative and quantitative data. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Priya, and thank you very much, Dr. Ruhi, and the team members. I could see Professor Dharmendra. So it has been delivered a session on the research methods and the approaches that are prevalently accepted and are being talked about in the academic. Fraternity, right? I just thought of what's my audience. And what is the expectation of deeper into this particular question? I felt that primarily research work, right? So either that research can be associated with their doctoral which they might be pursuing right now, the academic fraternity who are interested in publishing themselves in leading reputed journals, just like FT50, ABDC, and leading now, and the kind of intermittent issues that we are facing. Views and your attempts through the chat box, and that is where I'm going to reflect upon those concerns that you have.
Hello, Naveen sir.
And answers that now comes up.
Hello, Naveen sir. Your voice is breaking, sir. Can you stop your video we can hear you clearly because I think some bandwidth problem from you. Sir,
I
can
think
you,
I cannot hear you.
sir, can you stop your video, sir?
Voice is lost. I stop sharing.
Hello.
Sir, your internet connection is poor.
And just go to the presentation mode for the better bandwidth. Is that
Yes.
okay?
Yeah, sir.
Switch
But,
off your video, sir.
And sir, switch off your video, sir.
Yeah. I think that is what I'm suggesting. I've now switched off my video. Now, is it fine?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now it's fine.
Now it's fine, right? So what I'm going
So you can share your screen.
to do is I'm going to now share the slides. Whatever I've said, I agree, Dr. Priya and the other participants, I was audible. And
Yes.
in one line, I would like to say thank you so much for this invitation
Welcome, sir.
and the support. Just give me a thumb. Okay. Okay, all of you, can you see my slides?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Slides are visible.
Okay, right. So session is on qualitative and the quantitative research, and this workshop is designed to equip you with the quality research project writing and data. And my coordinates have already been shared with you with my the expert that we have my session, which will delve deeper into these questions. The first is, what do we understand from the term research? What does research stands for all of us? What are the attributes of interesting research? And that's a question which we all are delving deeper through, either by virtue of being a research scholar or being a faculty or being a writer or project is make my research writings. The third important aspect that this particular, what is a research design? Followed by that, we are going to also talk about what are the important aspects of inductive and deductive methods of research. And then we are researches. I've just put a question because of research by focusing on research problems and research questions, and which I'm going to refer to as RQs. And finally, what are the research answers based on the theories that we are looking forward for? So let's see the basic term research. What do we understand from this term research? Research is the systematic or interested in. Now, when we see this particular definition that arises and the momentum in our mind is, what is this systematic process? And is this systematic process really going to help us to understand the body of knowledge and add value to the body of knowledge? The whole journey practitioner in a form of a high quality research that he undergoes with is going to come in in the subject of. Having said that, how can we learn research? Research is a cyclical process. It is an ongoing process, right? Which involves steps that begins with identifying the problem. Now, that's the point which I'm going to reflect upon with that we have undertaken. Further, it then consists of reviewing the literature. That's where we use the term called literature review, or the LRs, and specifying a purpose for the study, right? Why we are doing this particular research, that's also a very important question that we have in our mind when we do a research. And it also helps us in forming an information of the information. So there are a couple of information which is what in which direction these information is leading us to, and where ahead. So information of the information. So researchers help us to understand and for the available information and predict the unfolding of the future. This process further culminates in a report disseminated to the audience that is evaluated and used in the educational community. Right. Now, when I write educational community, I'm not resignation, because ultimately the epistemological understanding of knowledge says that it's the understanding of the subject, which is what everybody is looking for, the academia as well as the practicing world. And that's how we define the term research, which is more really practically useful for the practitioners as well as the academicians. Having said that, this is one. So what's the goal of our research? Right? And everybody, those who are in this particular session, I would just request you to please keep a notebook and just write down your questions in that notebook so that I can reflect upon it in due course of time. Now, when I raise this particular question, what's the goal of our research? The answer comes out to be either to build stories, or why are we working on information we have already gathered. Either you want to build a story. What is a story? It starts with a theme, and it reflects upon it through what you term it as artists, individuals who are the parts of that play, and then you further culminate it into a form of a. So when we talk about quality research should also have a storyline. What are we talking about? Where are we trying to take our understanding to? Right? What is this research reflecting upon when it further derives? Let's say I take an example of just like how to measure the sides of a triangle, how to measure the longest which is a Pythagoras theorem, right? So theories are abstractions. Theories are generalized disclosure in the form of outcomes. It is also simplified as explanations of reality, right? So theories also talk about that, okay, construct that we have. Theories present a new explanation or a new person. So Earth revolves around the sun, and a belief did not give us a theory about where does the sun rises, right? So how did we do that? That the sun rises on east is because we firstly determined the direction of the world. And now when I say that, then the theory evolved that thus around the sun, and because it's also that also gives the concept of the day and night, and the revolution gives us the concept of the year that we have. Then extending, modifying, and combining theories to generate new insights about the problem, and delve deeper into it. Okay, fine. Now this is what it is talking. There is understanding which is going to help us to further delve deeper into the researchable question that we have faced. So comes the importance of scientific research. The eternal cycle of scientific research delves into the concept related to theory and data, or theory and data. And we bifurcate it into or divide it into two types of researches. One is known as the inductive research. The inductive research talks about building theories from the data. So there is the data which is a set of numbers, and that data helps us to reflect upon and reach up to a theory, right? So inductive research finally leads to a formulation of a theory. Whereas when we talk about theories using the data, right? So deductive researches are researches where we do those kind of descriptive research, where we collect the data, we do the review of literature, we find out the gaps, and we try to test the outcomes in the form of the hypothesized question that we have. This scientific research is the continuous iteration between the theory, that is abstraction, and the data, that is part of our session. The understanding that you make out from part of my session is that theory and data are interconnected. How are they interconnected? Either by the inductive or by the deductive framework. If it's an inductive framework, we use the theories to form and from the data that which are available, right? And when we talk about the deductive research, we extend the available theories with the help of data and come up with a newer understanding, delving deeper into or investigating. Let's understand the types of reasoning here in his work in 2001, which is termed. So when we talk about deductive researches or the method, here we have the rules or the laws, which are the theories that we have. We build up a case, that means we build up certain constructables which are available with us, and we try to establish a relationship, and then we see and collate it in the form of, you could see research. There's going to be a rule frame a case, and this case will be further investigated through the reveal results and observations. That's the deductive form of research. Whereas when we move to the inductive form of research and the reasoning behind it, we'll see that we have already reviewed the literature, and then we have found out that the results and these results and observations made by various previous researchers are primarily are creating or building certain chips, and by connecting the chords or the nodes, you build up a case, right? And then you have to, okay, based on these two works, we conclude that this is what can be decided, that this particular thing or this particular subject matter has two important ingredients which are essential for its survival, right? And that becomes the theory for that particular subject as such. Then comes an interesting subject, an interesting research method, which is an abductive research. Now here what happens is, we are similar to that of inductive research. Here what we go to the second and investigate whether these theories are applicable to certain cases. And that is where we sector-wise study. Is it applicable to a particular sector? Is it applicable to a particular, not this particular results and observations are validated or are applicable to the cases that we have been able to identify by this reasoning of abductive research. Another important perspective of deductive, inductive, and abductive methods of research is with an example where I'm just quoting certain statements, and we'll be able to understand where are and what are these abductive researches are. Let's take a statement which is available. An individual named Socrates is a man, right? And that's the case that we have built up. And after that, then find out what therefore it means. It means that Socrates is mortal. Now that's basically which are available, and then deciphering in the form of the last row that is talking about the outcome, where we are talking and referring to Socrates is mortal. And this always comes out to be true. And that's the importance and significance of a deductive research. The second element, inductive research, have a statement called Socrates is a man, right? So we have a statement which is available with us. Then we build up a case that Socrates is mortal, right? We have read that, okay, fine, this also comes out of it, right? Then you theorize that, okay, therefore all men are mortal, right? So that's basic difference between a deductive research and an inductive research. Now what happens in an abductive research? The statement is what we deciphered from the inductive research as a finding comes up as a base statement for an abductive research. All men are mortal. That's an assumption that we have taken. And the second is more on how to be leading to others is model. And finally, it builds another important direction to us that, okay, therefore, Titus is a man, right? Now, that's what is coming out to be as an example of an. On to the deductive and the abductive frameworks, we also need to question on what does this research design all about? How and what are we supposed to draw from this concept of research design? A lot of researchers come to me and say that, sir, there has been a question on my research design. There has been a fundamental issue with my research design. Let me just place two interesting frameworks I've come across while I was preparing for this particular session. And over the years of my research guiding and other things, I've found that this is very relevant. A design is a framework or blueprint for conducting the planned research. So here the object of planned research. And if somebody wants to conduct the planned research, there has to be a structural on the basis of which he is going to move forward, right? And that is why we are using a word called blueprint for conducting the planned research. This research is for obtaining the information needed to structure or solve research problems. I can arbitrarily comment on a particular happening and express my views, but is it generalizable? Now the question is, can we generalize perception? And when this question arises, it is further questioned with another element: is perceptions that you have observed are generalizable. So that is what research design talks about. The ultimate objective of a quality and a well-structured research design is it will help you to solve the problem that you have placed as a researchable question. Let us see this particular diagram. I'm just trying to explain you, or I'm just trying to present the research design in two important fronts. One, a research design which leads to an exploratory design, research design, where the question is clear, but you're investigating in an open world. The second is a conclusive research design. What you want to investigate through the descriptive research, here again from that inductive and deductive, if I open this as a question, what will primarily the deductive research will delve into? Can I have the participants to answer this question either from the two options available, either inductive or deductive? So this is primarily going to be inductive. Over to you all for your inputs. Can you just use the chat box?
Yes, participants, you can actually differentiate between inductive and deductive design, and you can write your questions in chat box.
The question is, under the descriptive research, are we delving into an inductive form of research method or the deductive form of research method? Now is it clear?
Sir, can you write the question in the chat box?
Okay. Okay. I think people are able to. Okay, right. So I'll take it forward here from this particular point, right? So when we talk about descriptive research has both the components involved into it, right? The inductive and the deductive. But in descriptive research, when we talk about the involved, it primarily delves deeper into the deductive form of research, right? So this deductive descriptive research done through cross-sectional study and longitudinal study. Now, what's a cross-sectional T1 and T2, right? In a cross-sectional study, we are doing an independent study of T1 and T2. We will what has happened over the years from T1 to T2. So that is what is coming under longitudinal research, and what comes under a cross-sectional research is a section of the total time that you have studied. You have picked up the data from that particular time, and then you've analyzed it. That comes under classification of research design is proposed by Pollitt and Hungine, where he classifies. One is the quantitative and the other is the qualitative. How many of you have heard about quantitative and qualitative terms in research? We have, sir, right? So good to hear that. There's a participant who says that yes, it is there. Harsha, I have switched off my videos so that we can have a better understanding of the lecture and my delivery. Clear? Just use the chat box. Is my audio clear?
Sir, it is interrupting in between because of the internet issue, I think. But you can continue, you are audible now.
Asha, Juhi, can you hear me? Yeah, absolutely fine, right. So we have the quantitative and the qualitative research designs. Under the quantitative, we have two. The experimental, we have three types. We have the true experimental, the quasi-experimental, which is the deemed experimental, and the pre-experimental. So under the true experimental, we do the pre-test designs, where we use a tool called t-test to understand whether there is a significant change in the pre and the post. Quantitative design is post-test, only control group designs, where administered something and you want to see a result, whether the improvement has taken place in that particular set of individuals or not, or the subjected patients, if I talk about medical research. So these are known as true experiment, and primarily these are used in the medical sciences as such. Then comes the quasi-experimental one, which is where the non-equivalent group designs, right? So in quasi-group designs, where we design our experimental questions of group that we are investigating, and then there is a variability in the type of groups that we are investigating. The second time series analysis over the years. Over the or the issue in question has been changing or what kind of trends it has been. The third important experimental quantitative research design is one short case study, which is where we talk about we study certain samples in the form of a case. And if these kind of outcomes are there, what are those questions which can be further investigated? The second is one group pretest a group and try to bring out certain research question so that we are able to help the findings what we have done through the quantitative pre-experimental design. Research includes non-experimental, which is where the most of the researches that we do in our doctoral works comes into picture, and it is covered by this particular type of reflective research. Empirical testing, we collect the data, we do a survey from the universe, we draw the sample, we do the surveys, and then we reflect upon those surveyed items based on what kind of scales that you have. Correlational studies, so Pearson's coefficient is used to do the correlations. You have collected the data, and after the data, there is you reflect upon what are the findings of those samples that you have studied in this descriptive study, which is primarily through a data collection in a quantitative manner. Then comes the comparative method, where you compare the data of two different subjects on a similar issue, and then you reflect upon that. And that comes under the descriptive type of comparative method time. Then comes evaluative method of research design, where then you evaluate whether there is a data change in your data that you've collected, and that we have decided is it in line with the kind of outcomes that we are getting and reach up to the objective that we have set for this particular kind of research. Then comes the methodological research, which is where you form and through a theory, you form a structure, and this structure is further weighted by an empirical data collection, and then you further reflect upon it that, okay, fine, this data is relevant for the sector for the sample finalized for doing this particular research. This is all about the quantitative design. Now we are going to get deeper into the next or the other form of qualitative form of research design. So the easy way to understand a quantitative research design and qualitative research design is quantitative is going to be with with texts, right, or the themes. And so when we talk about the qualitative research design, the methods that we follow here is the phenomenological method, one by one to these subjects on phenomenological, ethnographic study, and grounded theory in my later slides. Having said that, phenomenon by collecting and analyzing the point where that it is the numerical data which is the primary unit of study with respect to the subject that you are investigating. It tells you is a difference, but not necessarily why, because you've collected the data in a particular time. Data collect. So when you collect the data, you do a lot of analysis. So you find the mean, you median, mode, and then you say that this is what is the it is, right? But depends on the research question, you have to further reflect rather than just only reflecting upon the means, the medians, and the modes that we find as much as possible, right? And just like us as the gold standard stands for is which we use when we talk about the gold standards that we measure for assessing the quality of gold. So we can eliminate interferences and measure the effect of any change to such nature and type of research that we are doing. Randomization is again to reduce the subjective biases, quantitative, but subjectivity has personal biases. Now that's one. Your theorization and your construction of question plays a very important role. The next point is quantitative approaches. They're primarily a reflection of your quantitative analysis. So if there are no numbers, not going to be termed as a, and that's the prerequisite for doing a quantitative research. So when you frame a question, you should also delve deeper into, am I going to go deeper to the qualitative part of the gap through the gap that I have been able to identify. The last and important point that the quantitative approach talks about is then others, right? So some of the researches requires a quantitative has changed over the years, and that is where you want to set a scale, a Likert scale, and would like to know from strongly agree to strongly disagree, and that is what also is followed under the quantitative approaches of the research. The other type of research design is qualitative approach. So any research that does not involve numerical data, and what if it does not involve numerical data, what and where the study is going to be done, it is primarily related to the texts, the theory, the theorems, as such, if you are doing a survey-based qualitative. Instead, it uses, that means it uses words, pictures, photos, recordings, field notes in generally to study the reflections of those respondents as such. People's spoken words are also referred to while we do the qualitative approach-based research, right? Now that's where we talk about content design and content or text analytics-based research. It also tends to start with a broader than a specific qualitative research. You don't frame and you primarily do exploratory research, right? Which is where you try to know the understanding of the respondents and bring out where psych or the group think is. It also helps in developing theory rather than starting with one. So with 2 points and the observations made by various respondents and the subject who are relevant for the design, where you frame a theory that, okay, fine, this particular form of respondents are reflecting upon this particular direction of thought. And so you theorize that their views are in this direction. And then you talk about inductive rather than deductive methods. So in qualitative methods, that was the business methods are more into inductive, and quantitative methods are more into deductive forms of research or design. What is this qualitative research? Qualitative business research that addresses to provide elaborate interpretations of phenomena. Now that's a very important term, right? So phenomena is a group of phenomena which actually constitute, it's a plural of phenomena, and that investigate when we do a qualitative research without depending on numerical because of its own limitations as to its straitjacketed definitions are concerned. When you talk about strong agree to strong partially focus is on discovering true inner meanings we take note of, right? When we do a qualitative research, we primarily focus in meanings of research that we are doing. What is the researcher dependent? Researcher must extract meaning from unstructured responses such as text, from a recorded. So something when you take up a qualitative research, what is your base data? Is your base data very arbitrary and unreliable? Then your qualitative outcomes are not going to be authentic. I repeat, if your information that all these data that qualitative research study is concerned. So when you are collecting a qualitative research, sure of what's your researchable question, and try to bring out a methodical collection of insights by respondents in a subjective manner, which are very, very focused on your subject matter, rather than going for a arbitrary and broadly expressed viewpoints. So uses of qualitative research, specific and actionable decision statements or research objectives. The research objective is to develop a detailed and in-depth understanding of some phenomena. The research objective is to learn how a phenomena occurs in its natural setting, or to learn how to concept in colloquial terms. That's what is the purpose of doing the qualitative. The researcher is studying is particularly context dependent. Now that's an important point which every researcher should take note of. Every qualitative research that you are doing is focused on a particular time and on a context concern. And based on that, the reflections are being then collated information are being gathered, and that's what is of a qualitative research. A fresh approach to studying the problem is needed when we go for, and it helps you to theorize it the testing has to be done through the quantitative methods. Then what's the comparative assessment of qualitative versus quantitative research? So quantitative business research it's primarily descriptive and conclusive. It addresses research objectives through empirical assessments that involve numerical measurements and statistical analysis. Qualitative business research is more exploratory in nature. It uses small versus large samples, asks a broad range of questions versus structured questions. Again, I'd like to add here for the research base. It cannot be an arbitrary one. Interpretation is a part and parcel of qualitative business research, and statistical analysis is a part and parcel of the quantitative business research methods. Through a comparative disclosure, we can, through a comparative study, we can find out with certain research does it stand with respect to quantitative research. So if I talk about the common purpose for a qualitative research, it discovers an idea used in, right? So discovery is an objective, then qualitative research is a better proposition to work on. If there is an hypothesis that you have through the theories that you have read through your review of literature, then it's good to have, and that comes under the quantitative research. The second important research aspect to distinguish between qualitative research and quantitative research is the approaches. So when we talk about the approach under the qualitative research, this is more observational and interpretative. Whereas when we talk about quantitative approach, that means they have to be tested with respect to the quants, that is the numerals which are involved into the third important research aspect is data collection approach. Now, under the data focuses on the unstructured data, and it's a free flow of form which takes place because you want the respondents here. In the quantitative, it's more structured and categories are well defined and provided to the respondents, and those categories are further analyzed through the statistical and qualitative research. A researcher is intimately involved in the research. Results are subjective. An observer, that means the respondent, and results are very objective, right? There's biasness as far as when we talk about quantitative research, whereas it may happen, it also believes in the interpretation of text. The third or the fifth important research aspect which distinguishes qualitative and quantitative research is the sampling. So qualitative researches are primarily based on small samples with often in natural settings. How they are in viewpoint and perception. And when we talk about quantitative research, these are large samples to produce generalizable results that apply to other situations, right? So when we talk about statistical tools where we have to have minimum of 30, minimum of that you are using and the sampling size that you want to select for doing a particular research based on the universe that you are trying to study. The last is most often used exploratory research design in the qualitative research method, as a research design in the quantitative research. Now, one of the most interesting aspect of a researcher's journey is getting entangled with the type 1 and the type 2 errors. So these type 1 and the type 2 errors, I have a couple of questions. I'm going to take it one by one. So I've got certain questions of Professor Neha Singh, I think. I'm going to come back to those experimental design. When I finish my okay. So when we talk about type 1 and type 2 errors, a very old fable which we used to hear from our grannies and from our guardians and our senior members of the family, where they used to tell us a story about a liar shepherd and his false cry for a wolf. We used his or her input. To error. I'm waiting for your answers. Was it type 1 and a type 2 error? Now you will recall, right? So in the interest of the lecture, I'm just going forward with the explanation. Now this is a very interesting story, right? Boy who villagers come to him, and after knowing that they were absolutely disheartened by the act of the boy. Right now, this is what is the next time when the boy actually sees a wolf, he makes a call, and when none of them they turn up, that came out to be a disastrous phase of situation type 2 error, right? So never confuse type 1 and type 2 errors again. Just remember that the boy who cried wolf caused both type 1 and the type 2 errors in that order. First, everyone believed there was a wolf when there wasn't a wolf there. So this is what selecting a false null hypothesis. Null hypothesis. That's what is the time. Use your chat box to comment on this example so that I'll be able to be assured of that the ideas are getting seeped in very well. All of you. The type 1 and the type 2 error example. Please use the chat box.
All the participants kindly use the chat box and you can write about type 1 and type 2 errors.
Okay, I got a couple of answers, right? So type 2, write about type 1 and type 2 errors. And have you been, right? The first call of the boy was a type 1 error, right? Accepting the false null hypothesis. And the second is type 2 error is rejecting the true null hypothesis, right? That I'm just moving forward with to the interest of time. And I'll take up your finish of my presentation. Another question which is going to be there. Everybody to please use the chat box for the questions that I'm asking. Right. Okay. Right. So having to some qualitative and confirmatory research aspects. So under qualitative data, data that are not characterized by numbers, but rather are textual, visual, or oral are primarily falling under the qualitative researches. It focuses on stories, visual portrayals, meaningful captions, and other expressive descriptions. Whereas in quantitative data, it represents phenomena by assigning numbers, meaningful, and that's where the scales that you select for appropriate configuration between the three methods of research. We'll get into the details of it, and then you'll be able to understand that exploratory helps you to theorize, and this line which is connecting descriptive, those theories are giving the descriptive researchers a food for thought to investigate with the research design that we have selected of data collection in the form of numbers, and then prepare a case and find out things. So you vet on the theories based on the sectors that you have selected or the samples that you have collected from a particular set of labels. Now, this finding further used by the causal researchers who actually see the cause and effect in report. Research is done through the descriptive methods has actually weighted the cause and the effects are absolutely in alignment with the findings of the theories which are already laid down. Explore. Just take note of my cursor. If you can see that, right? Now, this is where the causal researchers and the findings give insights to the exploratory researchers to rephrase and reframe that you have. The system of understanding has changed, and so now the go through a change, either transformatory or transitory change, right? A the theories that we have developed. Then we'll go deeper into the exploratory research. What is the objective of exploratory research? It provides insights and understanding of the subject. What's the characteristics? The characteristics primarily is the information needed is defined loosely. Research process is flexible and unstructured, and sample is small because you are delving in a widely open environment and trying to find out and figure out what is the direction of population or the sample or the sampling method through which you have collected those information. For a particular time, it may not be relevant for the other time. So during the COVID, if you collected some data now become from pandemic. It has now become an endemic. That's our understanding that we've developed during the 2 years of COVID and during the fagging end. I'm assuming, keeping it crossed, that it's like that. All findings when the COVID is out of our environment, it's only in an endemic phase. So we say that those are exploratory and it is only tentative. Outcome generally followed by further exploratory or conclusive research. So when you do an exploratory research, it has to be further substantiated research. The second is a descriptive research. The objective market is only concerned with the people who are researching in the marketing field. Market is our working area, the field of our study, right? The characteristics primarily includes information needed is largely defined because it's descriptive research. You have a theory well set, and then you decide on a structured tool to investigate in the form of a questionnaire and a research and a survey tool. Research process is formal and structured, and sample is large. Reflect upon the population's movement. Where does the population is directing us to? And findings are primarily normally reads the sentiments of sampling. The outcomes are findings are used as input of the various organizational study, marketing, research. They go for data collection. Why do they go for data collection? Because they want to overcome the time neutrality of the facts concerned, right? That means, is it contextually relevant or not? And if it is not, then those data which are collected may not be relevant in the present context. To COVID may not be that relevant as we have seen and gone through this pandemic. And that's where a descriptive quantitative research view to make a concrete decision-making actions there. Then comes the causal rules, determine cause and shift. Characteristics are information needed is clearly defined. Research process is formal and large. It is again conclusive, and findings are used as inputs of decision making. By this, what's going to be the outcome? So cause and effect, right? Thus, the effect is going to be relevant for the current population, the set of people for whom we are developing this particular kind of tool. The causal research helps you to give a concrete input which can be helpful for taking core decisions. As such, right? Then comes another important perspective, orientation, right? Now, under the qualitative research orientation, we have already seen in the research design, this design by Pillard's work, where he has talked about phenomenology, ethnographic case study. Now, when you talk about phenomenology as an orientation of research, qualitative research, it primarily deals and originates in knowledge of the research topic, right? What's the origin of that particular knowledge? Now, that's where you must have heard a word called epistemological sense of a research, right? And that's where the phenomenological studies really help you to delve deeper into the subject, which is a researchable, and there is a gap which you have been able to identify with a specific research question, research method. In this, it primarily deals and draws itself of individuals. And when I talk about the ethnographic study, it is to all the researchers and participants, please do note the epistemological and the ontological concepts. Epistemological are primarily related to the origin of knowledge or the philosophy of knowledge. And the ontology primarily related to the individual and how and where, which culture he belongs to. That is what is being done in the ethnographic study as such. The third is the grounded theory, which is talking about the sociological evaluation. And it asks and questions and originates its from the sociological theory. How in a society, being an individual, how the different those theories are generalizable. You say that there is a strong grounded background which actually substantiates and in the form of a theory which is termed as a grounded theory. The fourth is a case study based, which is originating in psychology and in business research, right? So psychology, you study a certain set of examples or cases of those patients. It's a psychiatric study, and then you bring out that the best way to handle these type or these category of patients are in this manner, right? And sometimes in the business research, there was a question where somebody asked that how we can do a study in the knowledge industry, in a non-mental study in the engineering field. Right, where we do in the fields of chemistry and microbiology, we do all these kinds of the virological studies also. We do, even in academics, we do a lot of studies related to that kind of field, right? Experimental research in business industries are not that relevant, but experimental research have been done by various experts. I tell you something about Robbins. We use a book of Robbins, and Robbins have been involved into a lot of experimental research. Eric Berne has done a lot of experimental research in behavioral studies as such, right? Approach further means a philosophical approach to sciences is inherently subjective and determined by the context in which people live. So the phenomena. It seeks to describe, reflect upon, and interpret experiences. It also relies on conversation about some experiences. And that's where we connect the phenomena of explained by an individual with the phenomenon which is going to reflect upon the view of the respondents by their stories. And that's what is the phenomenological approach to research. Then the second is hermeneutic, understanding phenomenology that relies on analysis of text, the words that you choose, the respondent uses, through which a person herself, how good is he to reflect upon his own self, right? It may articulate in a better manner, may score good as far as the hermeneutic style of passage from a respondent's story that is linked with a key theme from within the respondent's story or provided by the researcher, right? So sometimes you would see some of the researchers, they tell you to please write a journey of yours, right? And then they try to decipher what are the places of investigation and what are the places of delight for this particular leader, and where the leader has really been able to express challenges in the crisis situation in the environment. Studying cultures through methods that involve becoming imagining culture response. So a study done in sub-Saharan region or in a South Asian subcontinent region, or if you go to New Zealand and you do a study of Maoris, that is the tribes which is there in New Zealand, you will see an ethnographic diverse nature of perceptual deaf communities that you are referring to for a specific kind of reflection on a particular subject matter. In ethnographical study, the researcher becomes in observations. So a couple of Discovery Channel researches are based on the ethnographic studies, right? Where they study some tribes, they go to the Amazon jungles and research on certain tribes and they investigate the native tribes there and find out what are the cultural takes on different rituals, and all those things falls under the ethnographic study. What is grounded theory? Grounded theory primarily talks about an inductive investigation in which the researcher poses questions about information provided by respondents into the and what and how it is happening. So what is happening here and how is it research? And this is something which is going to help you for all researchers and scholars and people who are willing to write research tools which can really help you to investigate in a much more deeper manner. I'm just going to read it out. And this slide I can share with all of you, which is a pick of this particular slide also, so that you can get an understanding of what all it is, rather than getting into the details of each tool. Focus group interview, which is primarily done for use is to gain considerable insight from each individual. Conversations are primarily dealing with, and its advantage is to get unique insights from the enthusiasts. It also helps to delve deeper into sensitive. It also helps in expensive, it's less expensive than the depth interviews or focus groups. That's the first one. Semi-structured interviews can be easily interpreted, and cost advantages over focus group studies, because it incurs you have to go for focus group interviews. To call interviews, which is not the case in the semi-structured. Sentence completions are it can be done. There are tools, there are research is again going to reveal and yield actual behavior. Collage is flexible enough to allow those tools where projective expressions are there. It allows to get at sensitive issues. And it's flexible. And having delved deeper into the types of research design, flows of research design, types of qualitative and quantitative researches, difference between qualitative and quantitative researches, inductive researches, and methods and different tools of qualitative researches. Now the question arises, the question is, what's a research question? Right, do you agree with this point or not? Do you agree with this point or not? Please use the chat box to answer. The first step to start in a researcher's journey, it is a research question, right? All of you, are you getting me? Just say yes, use your chat box. Yes, absolutely fine. Thank you. How can you find interesting research problem? And there are 4 options. And I would like everybody to exercise their inputs by asking your faculty, by reading papers in the library, by observing practice, and none of the above. And you can suggest any better method that you all for A and D options. Please exercise your options in the chat box. Use the chat box. Okay. I got an answer. I want everybody to participate. Right? Right? Absolutely.
All the participants, please write your answers in the chat box.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, guys are answering. I know. Right. So I could see Shruti, Narendra, Shruti again. Then we have Akshita, and right answers by a couple of them. I have given a perfect answer for you all is observation. Right. So I can be right. Why I'm saying that observation plays a very important role when you want to form research problem, right? So when we talk about research problem, then what are we talking right now in this particular section of my presentation is how. So for that, we have to firstly identify what's the research problem. Where do we find good research problems? By observing something unexpected, paradoxical, or different. And that's where the third eye of Shiva. And that's where, as you're right, the supervisor, guide, chairman, chairperson of your research will really help you. The second thing is of researchers, and the research is done prior to yours and from standard journals. I just the researchers to please follow the reputed journals for drawing out research papers. I'm just quoting right now. Go for A and A star journals. For the subject to start with you, what are these ABDCs and what are these FT50 journals, right? ABDC is Australian Business Dean list of journals which are given. If you type ABDC in Google, you will get the list of journals under ABDC. Go for A and A star journals, right? Find out what is the latest, right? Where do we find good research problems? By observing something unexpected, paradoxes that patients rather than affirm them. Right. So something. When you say why W that you have is what and why, right? That is going to give you and help you to reach to the depth of that interesting research, right? Gaps, anomalies, and I've quoted gaps in quotes because that's very important for a researcher. You start going into, because I just want to do my PhD, I want to become a professor, I want to do academics, but you don't go and delve deeper into the subject, the topic that you are in future of your career as such, because that is what you're going to talk about. I'm just sharing knowledge in a week, which is an outcome of a doctoral work that I have completed in subject of employer branding. And having your paper published in a reputed journal, I don't say that it's very high quality, but it's a reputed and it's a very acceptable category of journal. Right? But then for this journey, I have gone A's and A-star journals, right? And that's where I identified and got to know that, okay, gaps are very important. Anomalies are very important. Paradoxes are very important and are unresolved. What is the new finding that you're researching? Work, right? So again, a research problem, I framed a research question, and then I was able to publish that. What do we need to locate good research? Shiva in yourself, right? Awareness of events around newspapers, always follow the reputed ones. Read Economist, read The Wired, read Times, read journals like, as far as the European lists are concerned. Willingness to question everything, right? And that's what that picture is talking about. Have that enlightened mind to question why, what, how, and when, right? The problem of a research problem is real solutions, which is where stories help you. Bigger, messier, complex problems may be useful insights, right? But as a researcher, always appreciate, have a notebook, have I'll say a screenshot of a problem which you have thought. So when you open your laptop, you will see that, okay, I am investigating right now on this particular, I'm delving on this particular problem. Right? Is it a right problem or not? Keep it for 1 week and you will be whether that's a researchable problem or not, because persistence of vision is really going to help you. Research problems set the tone and direction. Problems that aren't worth studying. Read about a particular work done on a particular kind of a problem will not be interesting, which is going to really help you to understand. Then comes, what are the ingredients of a good research question? Research questions are questions that we seek to answer about our research problems, right? So I'm just giving you a couple of questions that we can ask on innovation, social media, digital business failure, which are relevant in the current context and can be further investigated upon. What are the factors that drive innovation in firms? Interesting, right? With startups coming up, this is a very interesting question on innovation, because that's going to set the seed for startups, unicorn in the upcoming future. 10 years back, if you go back 10 times, you're able to see these are a couple of them, many of them are now more existing because the innovations are taking up, he works best and under what circumstances, and the underlying is what circumstances. That's going to be really of greater interest for the researchers and for the body of knowledge. Why do some innovations succeed and other innovations fail? Does it hold a commercial value? If it doesn't, then it will not be that usable and worthwhile for having an economic value in future. Let's see a couple of questions that we can ask on the social media addiction. Drivers of social media addiction. So much glued to WhatsApp, Instagram, then we have Telegram, then we have Twitter, quite professional one, but still there are a lot of questions are being there, recruiters, various companies, where various business partners which are planning to do joint venture with another company, they go to the LinkedIn profile and say, is it worthwhile? Does that individual's LinkedIn profile does or not, right? What intervention strategies can help mitigate, minimize social media addiction? That's concern, especially this is with parental concerns that we have, and the guys, the kids who are below the age of 5 or below the age of 10, doing phenomenal practices which are happening with respect to so failure rates so high among small businesses, right? And this is what the data can best mitigate small business failures, right? Which intervention will work best under economic upturns versus downturns? Now that's an interesting question with the kind of situation which we have seen in the last 2 years, right? So that's the research question. And so what makes a research question interesting? Attributes of interesting research. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that? Yes, obvious and sometimes counterintuitive, right? It is very obvious. You will always not, obviously, it's a well-known fact. Right. Obvious question, right? So let's not go into those kind of questions, right? Search for explanations, not just descriptions. Why? Right. Your impact of research, the question, the research topic, the hypothesis that you frame based on should be for the betterment of the large segment of the society, and it should be different, right? It should not be obvious. Many don't get into those kind of trivialities of research issues. Be little you when you go in the later half of your researches and post the researches. When you want to get yourself published, you will find it difficult because there are work which is available in the researches, right? How to identify interesting research questions? It requires deep knowledge of the problem domain to see gaps, problems, fielders to understand their everyday problems. And that is where your interesting investigative self and its action is going to help you to identify very interesting research questions. And this quote I have drawn it especially for you. An approximate answer to the right question is worth a good deal. An approximate question. Very interesting line. I would request all of you particular quote, right? Please go them and exactly devote 20 seconds on this particular quote so that you will be able to understand what an interesting research question and what should be the research design and the method that I am supposed to follow. Presentation. Answer it in the chat box.
So there are few questions which our attendees want to ask. May I ask the questions
Yeah, ma'am.
now? Sir, am I audible?
Yeah.
So there are a few questions which our attendees wants to ask you.
Yeah, you're
Should I ask?
audible. Should I take the Q&A from it?
Sorry, sir.
Yeah.
So your voice is breaking.
Should I have Dr. Priya?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Dr. Priya?
Sir, cannot hear you.
How much time do I have?
So we are
Dr. Priya, can you hear me?
we are running short of time.
Okay.
Should I ask the question, sir? On the behalf of attendees?
So should I take up the Q&A or?
Yeah, sir. You can
picture?
take up the Q&A. You can take up the Q&A, sir.
I can take up the Q&A, right? So
Yes, sir.
I'll take up. So there's a question by what points one has to keep in mind before. By now, Arushi, you have been able to get this answer, right? So this was a question at 2:38 and now we are at 3:40. So Arushi, you have been able to understand the source is your research question, right? And your observation will give you research, right? And also your expertise on quantitative and qualitative methods, which is really going to help. Is it fine? I'll appreciate if you can buy, this is by designs, right?
Your voice is breaking.
Yeah. Hello, I've switched off my videos and that's the best I can do. The 3 experimental designs are primarily for what kind of research you would like to go, right? So if you talk about a pure or a true experimental design, it's primarily for researchers which have a high degree of on perceptual based study, right? And then the third form or a pre-research is what are we supposed to do when I'm planning for an experiment. Experimental gives you an insight on experimental or a quasi-experimental work, right? Then I think draw its own constructs from this theory.
Sir, you are not audible.
Right, and probably am I now audible?
Yes.
Am I now audible?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just taking Dr. Ahmed's question on exploratory research and descriptive research. Exploratory research gives you constructs for the descriptive research, and these constructs are then going to be tested by the quantitative data, right? And that we have between the exploratory you do, where I have another question by Amit Kumar. Is this problematic if one aims to research design methods? No, dear, absolutely not. Right. I would really like to advise until unless you don't know what for it is requested for. So your research question sets the ball, and its gap is going
So your voice is breaking.
to really help the quality. I'm going to, I think that's the last question.
Okay, sir, please.
No, not our successes are used in qualitative research. However, we want to study a small community spread across. See, small sample in a qualitative research will actually bring forth that you would like to draw from the context that you are trying to investigate that particular. And that's why now in a qualitative data with tools like R and Python and many other tools like it has now become easier to do text analytics, but then the dictionaries are becoming also getting published, right? Joey, I hope I've been able to give you a direction to this. Some of the people are doing the qualitative data with the dictionaries, the things that the combination of words that the respondents are using, and its flows and its repetitiveness and on the research. But then here the researcher's biasness is also one of the biggest concerns that we have. A small community study spread can be considered a good qualitative study, but has to be vetted by a quantitative study whether that particular understanding has been reached. Hope I've been able to answer your question. And the last question, I think, no, not project, for the descriptive analysis or data, is it necessary to formulate an hypothesis? Now, there are schools of thought, right? Some people's hypothesis is necessary. Hypothesis, all researchable questions are not hypothesizable, right? Now, here what I would like to say is when you either moderating, mediating, all these types of relationships, if you want to study, then probably open-ended research design. Right? Don't have an hypothesis, but have a very good research investigable question. Right? What are you planning to investigate? Right? She asked, if you want to implement a developmental program has to be implemented, and what should be appropriate sample size? It's a scholar. Talk about developmental programs in schools. Experimental designs are more relevant. Such propositions are based on certain theoretical constructs, right? So what do you want to accept? The application of the new education policy, right? And the specific, then you have to ask for and do a qualitative study of the sample and would like to experiment on certain specific tools which we use in the primary education or in middle level education as far as an education tool. Is it right? Hope I've been able to answer all your questions, and thank you all participants. It would have been a great learning for all of you and for me too, having such good questions
Thank you so much, sir. Now to sum up the points, Professor Naveen has enlightened us
from
on.
your end, and I really appreciate. And sorry, Dr. Priya.
Yeah, sir. Am I audible, sir?
I'm done.
Yeah, okay, sir. Thank you so very much, sir. Now to sum up the points, Professor Naveen has enlightened
From my side, if there are any audio questions.
Sir, am I audible? Sir, am I audible?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir, for being here. Now, to sum up the points, Professor Naveen has enlightened us on the following: that what is the research, what is its goal and importance, and what is the importance of scientific research, and then eternal cycle of scientific research, research design as a blueprint for research, classifications of research designs, uses, approaches, and implications of qualitative research. And he has talked about qualitative and quantitative research. He has talked about contrasting exploratory and confirmatory research. He has talked about appropriate configuration of the different methods in research, like descriptive, exploratory, and causal research. Qualitative research method orientations, phenomenology, ethnography, grounded theory, and case studies. He has talked about a new concept, that what is hermeneutics. That is an approach to understanding phenomenology, which lies on the analysis of text. That is a new thing which is being added, sir. So he has talked about ethnography and research problems, and how to find good research problems so that your research will be more substantial and more worthy to take forward for other researchers as a base. So, sir, I, Dr. Priya Sachdeva, Associate Professor, would like at Amity School of Communication, would like to thank you on the behalf of Amity School of Communication for taking this session and giving us your precious time here. And I would like to thank you for enlightening all of us for deep research design and approaches which will help the faculty and students in their future researches. Thank you so very much, sir, for being here.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. P. Thank all the organizing committee for organizing such an interesting session, and a very technological glitches that has happened because of the poor bandwidth. To try my level best.
No worries, sir, but otherwise it was a very insightful session, and we really got very deep insights into the research design.
Yeah.
Indeed, it was a very enlightening session, sir. We really want to thank you for taking out your time from your busy schedule and delivering such insightful session for all of us. Thank you so much, sir. I would like to inform all the participants that if you have any other question,
with your I can leave now.
Sir, I want to make one announcement. So this announcement is for the participants. We have noted down all the questions which you have mentioned in the chat box. If you have any other query, you can.
Not audible, ma'am.
Yeah. And we will get back to you with the help of resource person. We will provide you all the answers to you. So this is,
I'm open for any query. I've just shared. Okay, thank you.
thank you so much, sir, for your time. And
And Dr. Ruhi, just about the feedback form also.
Namaskar. Dr. Priya, if you try.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
participants, you are requested to fill the feedback form that is for the attendance purpose, and 80% attendance is mandatory for receiving the certificate. So kindly fill the feedback form, which will be shared to you through WhatsApp group also, which is made for the participants. Thank you all. I request IT team to close the meeting.